And this is why remakes aren't always a bad thing. Today we have the remake of West Side Story. So yeah, in case you didn't hear about it, they did a remake of West Side Story. I talked a bit about how they were going to do it on my review the other week of the original 1961 West Side Story, directed by Steven Spielberg. And if you don't know that name, then I'm not, just Google him. I mean, there's some names where even if you don't watch a lot of films, you got to at least know it, like what this man has done. So I guess he saw the original way back in the day and just had the thought where he's like, you know what, I could probably, I like that a lot. Let's see if I can make it even better. And you know what, to his credit, he does. He does a very good job with this. Again, too much of an ensemble cast, but I guess like we have our main two. We have, now you may or may not know the name, but you probably would know the face. We have our titular starring role, Ansel Elgort, if I'm saying that correctly, as I know him, Baby Driver. I think Baby Driver personally is what propelled him into the spotlight for me. I know that I think he was in Carrie, like the remake of Carrie they made some years back, but I know him from Baby Driver. I loved him in that, and it just goes to show this man has I don't know if it's an inclination on his part, but he seems to keep getting sucked into these musical roles for films. Ansel Elgort plays a leading role right opposite of a Rachel Zegler, which she's kind of new to the filmmaking scene and all that. She's going to be in the second Shazam movie they're making right now, but in terms of what she has made, there's not a long filmography, but she is like a YouTuber and like social media personality, kind of like what I do, but better. So, I mean, yeah, whether she's singing or whether she's like doing these videos or vlogs online, like she has like an online presence, and this is her, like, I guess her big breakout role, I think. But yeah, they both kill it. So yeah, overall, for anybody that doesn't already know, they brought back West Side Story for like I think it's the 60th anniversary. We're past the 60-year mark, I think, but they brought West Side Story back in theaters for a couple days, and I was like, you know what, I've never seen West Side Story. I like musicals. Some musicals I even love. Let's go check it out. And I did not enjoy it that much. I understood its cultural and like historical significance and relevance. There were some songs that I enjoyed, there were some moments that were good, and there were some scenes that were really creative with the tech they had back then, what they did. But overall, I didn't find it too compelling. I didn't really fully enjoy the musical. So I was curious to see how this new one would sit with me. And I gotta say, the remake of West Side Story I thought was leaps better than the original. Granted, I'm a bit biased because I'm a product of my time. When you take anything and you're gonna put it through a more modern paint job with like the tech that we have, the people, the resources, and of course like a Class A director like this, you're gonna get some form of a positive product. It is well directed, it is still like the same story, but it has been revamped, and it just works so much better for me. By definition of what a remake is supposed to do, what I believe a remake is supposed to do, it accomplishes that with flying colors and goes above and beyond what it's trying to do in its efforts. I actually found this one entertaining. I think this one for me, it had more of an emotional punch to it. There was more intensity. Maybe because like, yeah, they're still all dancing, like they're still dancing around and, interpretive dance to express themselves. But, with the first one, it felt like, maybe it's because there's more violence, I guess, and I hate to say that violence helped me connect with it more, but when you watch the first one and they're dancing and they're like clearly pulling punches and not doing much anything, then it's hard to really like get invested and take that seriously. But no, people get fucking socked in this movie. There's like fighting going on. There's definitely, it's not gratuitous by any stretch of the definition, but it definitely makes things feel more intense when you actually have like physical and emotional confrontation on screen. I also like how they didn't shy away from the very clear racism that exists in the original film. If anything, they might have even like stepped it up a little bit, but they show a clear racial tensions between both sides of this war basically going on between these like kids, between the Jets and the Sharks, It kind of feels like they pulled back a little bit on the police brutality angle, like they kind of hint at it, like still corruption in the system. That is one thing it takes a bit of a back seat in this one, is that they don't lean as heavily into the police angle of it, although they still handle that well, but it's mostly about the Jets and the Sharks and the racial tensions occurring there. There were some changes that were implemented, like the order of a song or two was changed around and applied at a different part of the film, and I think when they did that, it actually worked well, if not better. Like, it was curious, because normally you would see, like, a big change in a film or narrative like that in a remake and people lose their minds, and, like, I would be like, well, why would you do that? It wasn't necessary, but the changes that were made in this film, I think, worked out very well, and translated well for a modern audience. But it still wasn't entirely perfect for me. I still think there were some moments that the original suffers heavily from pacing issues and from, I wasn't able to get into it as much, but, like, this one, there were still some moments where I thought pacing was a little bit off, and I still kind of, like, there were a couple moments distinctly where I started pulling away from the film, and I was like, okay, well, let's go ahead and wrap this up, but not nearly as much as in the first, like, the original film. This film definitely kept me going more than the original did. Some characters still feel underdeveloped, which is a shame. They definitely take more time to develop Ansel Elgort and Rachel Zegler's characters. Like, even, like, the shop owner, like, they change up how the whole, like, Doc's shop is, and instead it's Doc's wife who's, like, lives in successes, and there's more of a connection and relationship there between his wife and Ansel's character. So they really, it's curious to see how Spielberg was able to take these characters and try to add more emotion, more depth into them, but then other characters, I think, suffer at the hands of that. Like, you have Riff, who's the main guy, who's the head of the Jets, and, like, I feel like you got a little bit of development from him, but I feel like he kind of took a back seat, and so did some of the other members of the gang that might have had more of a prevalent role in the original. There were characters throughout that they were still featured and they still had their roles, but they definitely weren't as prevalent, and I think that they could have been developed more, even if just a little bit more. And of course, the biggest plot hole for me that really kind of wrecked the thing for me in the first one, and still is something I can't wrap my head around in this remake, is, and it's not a spoiler because this movie's been out for a long time now, but Tony, Ansel Elgort, Tony kills Bernardo, which is, Maria's brother. And that happens. It's in a heated moment, passionate moment, kills him, and then it's like, oh my god, and then he, like, goes back to her apartment when she finds out and all of this. But it's really weird because she finds out, she's like, you killed my brother, how could you? And he's like, I'm gonna go turn myself into the police and do the right thing. And she's like, no, we'll still run away together, I still love you. And it's just, look, I know love is a very powerful thing, but that's just one thing I can't quite believe, is like, this man that you met one day ago, you're telling me that your brother, even if you don't have the best relationship with your brother, you're telling me that your brother, your blood brother, gets murdered by the man that you fell in love with a day ago, and you're going to still be like, well, it's unfortunate, but I love him, we're gonna run away. Like, I can't quite believe that. I can't quite get past that. And I get it, like, oh, love and other drugs, right? But no, not for me. It's a very big logical leap that kind of, you have to, like, you're forced to put that in the backseat of the car of this movie, and then be like, okay, yeah, I believe it. And it's like, I can't quite believe it, I'm sorry. I think it's actually kind of worth seeing in theaters. Like, also the way that it was shot and directed, which, by the way, it was directed very well, so Spielberg, great job as always. It was still shot where it looks like it's a film, like it still had that film grain to it. Again, it has that feel where it, like, looks good and is HD, but it's not that crisp, clear, super smooth 4K resolution. It looks like you're watching kind of an old film, but still, like, looks super nice. So it's kind of cool to see that effect still used for films today. I don't have much else to say about it. I think West Side Story, the 2021 remake, is a very good example of, like, what a good remake is supposed to be. It takes the original source material and, like, while still honoring it and replicating parts of it and paying homage to it, makes changes and alterations and adds and subtracts in ways that are supposed to be for the betterment and the advancement of the film. And I think in this case it was done very well. It was handled very well, while still paying respects to the original, giving us a new and, in my opinion, better version of its source material. And that's why, even though I have a couple little gripes about it myself, I still would give West Side Story 2021 a low 4 out of 5. a low 4 out of 5. It is definitely above average. It is not a perfect film for me. I thought it was really good. It's a film that I would be more than willing to sit down and watch again, as opposed to the original West Side Story, which I have no overwhelming desire to see again. But I really liked this. I liked it a lot. And I was kind of hoping that I would, and I did. And I just think it's worth seeing. It's a nice, like, it's even like a minute or two longer than the original. And I mean, you still kind of feel the length, but it's handled better. It's an entertaining musical, but it still is not one of my favorite musicals. It's still iconic for a lot of people. It's still very good in the social messages that it tries to bring forth to the table here, but it's still not one of my favorites, but good job. As always, thank you guys and gals so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of whatever movie I review. Goodbye, travelers.